As many of you know, I'm particularly interested in issues of public confidence, how the NRC builds and maintains public confidence. And so I guess my first couple of questions are going to be for Dr. Victor. Dr. Victor, based on your experience in the community engagement panel at San Onofre, what can you tell us about effective communication between NRC and the public, or between licensees and the public? You know, kind of what worked well, what miscommunications or missteps did you see, and what can the NRC do better in that regard?
From our perspective, let me make a few remarks. My sense has been enormously important that we are not a decision-making panel. So that means that the panel can focus on facts and analysis and diverging points of view, and doesn't need to get itself wrapped around the procedures of making formal decisions and formal oversight and so on. I see that as an enormous strength of the panel. In other communities and other reactors, things have been done in different ways. They're more procedural. My sense is the procedures are kind of get in the way of these fluid and complex topics. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is I have been pleasantly, I won't say surprised, I didn't have any priors, but I've been thrilled by the engagement of NRC staff in the regions and also at central headquarters with us as we grapple with the technical questions. I've also been alarmed at the extent to which a number of people have taken NRC comments out of context, kind of lambasted staff members in public, made wild accusations. And I think that's not helpful to us in the community, and it's not helpful to you, and it gets everybody's backs up. And so I think we've got to find a way to continue to talk with each other about these complex technical issues. So that's, I think, a very important lesson. The last thing I guess I would say is I think confidence in the public is going to continue to be shaken so long as we don't have at least, I won't say a solution, but a strategy that is viable for long-term management of spent fuel, that includes interim storage, but includes a repository. And so I would hope that there's a way for us in the individual communities to talk more with Congress and more with the NRC where that's relevant. Today's meeting is part of that, to articulate what we could actually do that would help build some public confidence. And people along the way raise a lot of interesting questions, including questions that are typically safeguards and classification questions. And I think one of the things we've shown over the last couple of years is it's possible to deal with a lot of those technical issues in plain English and in a non-classified, non-safeguards way. And that's helpful. There are always going to be some people who are just going to disagree with you no matter what you say. You say it up, the other person says down. I get that. But for folks who are open to ideas and debate, it's possible to talk about a lot more openly than I think the industry has assumed.
You said something interesting in your presentation. You said the NRC regulatory framework should be a floor and not a ceiling. And I'd be interested to hear you talk more about that. And in particular, some of those additional agreements or kind of above, things above the floor or so forth might be between a community or another jurisdiction and the licensee. But do you have any specific recommendations for NRC to kind of address this point? Obviously rulemaking is something that we do, but there are other maybe potential mechanisms at NRC as well.
Yeah, so I don't know a full answer to that question. It's a good question. I think at minimum, it would be very important for the NRC to signal that these additional arrangements that are made between plants in the local communities or plants and local regulators. In the case of the San Onofre plant, a lot has happened through the Coastal Commission because the Coastal Commission is the kind of supreme California licensing body for all things coastal. And so a lot of it gets refracted through provisions that the Coastal Commission requires. I think at minimum, some confidence that the NRC views what it's doing quite appropriately as a regulator, as a floor, and then within limits, letting plants go and address local community needs. This has come up for us in a lot of places. One example is now a real-time radiation, fence line radiation monitoring system that streams to a California public agency. I believe there's only one other plant in the US that does that. I think a lot of engineers look at that and scratch their heads, well, why would you need that? But that's been part of the local community discussion is building confidence around that. And then also, obviously, there's been a lot of questions raised about security of the ESFC and whether there might be additional rules. I've written a letter to the NRC about whether the NRC might be developing additional rules in that area. But meanwhile, the plant has already gone on and implemented things above and beyond with regard to physical security of the ESFC. And we've had a chance to talk about that in a fairly open way with the public. So I think at minimum, if plants could have confidence that they could do these things and not face blowback from the NRC, that would be helpful.
Thank you very much for that.